quite a few people, so it's good that you guys are talking to them.
Okay.
That seems to be working.
All right, it's working. Great.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yep, and we got Cambridge.
Okay.
That seems to be working.
All right, it's working. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yep, and we got Cambridge.
Okay.
That seems to be working.
All right, it's working. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yep, and we got Cambridge.
Can you guys hear me?
That seems to be working.
Michael, you're on mute.
Okay, we couldn't hear you before. We can now. Marilee, do you want to let us know when we're ready to start?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? I'm going to share a YouTube video during the session. Michael, you're on mute.
Still? Okay, we couldn't hear you before. We can now. Marilee, do you want to let us know when we're ready to start?
Sure. Hold on one second.
Can you guys hear me? I'm going to share a YouTube video
There-
during the session.
Weird, massive delay, echo, and everything we said. Still? We couldn't hear you before. We can now. Marilee, do you want to let us know when we're ready to start?
It sounds like it's on a loop. Hold on one second.
I'm going to share a YouTube video during the session.
Does someone have the YouTube video and the audio is on? We need to turn the audio off if one of us is watching the YouTube video somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not logged in.
I'm not either. So, Marilee, that might be you. You can just mute the tab for YouTube.
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
I've got my phone, so text me
All right. Will do.
during the call if you need a message.
Well, we're live on YouTube. I don't know if we're ready to start. Marilee, I'm waiting on you to give us the rundown. I don't know. Maybe we should just talk. It says we're live here. So, Lawton, you want to just kick us off? And let's just pretend people
sure.
watch.
Good. So, guys, I apologize. I'm in the Zoom meeting, but I can't see the YouTube session. Marilee, do I need to log into the YouTube session as well, or what should I do here?
Yeah, I don't see the YouTube session either. So. Yeah, Marilee, I don't know if you can hear us. You're on mute, but okay. Lawton, let's do this.
No, I've got it. There's a slight delay, but I got it. So
Great.
Let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in Zoom. I cannot see the share my second screen here. Give me just one moment. And let's see, can you see this okay?
Yes.
So those of you that are in the room, just to let you know, a little bit of technical difficulties. I am logged into a Zoom room to present on YouTube live, and I can't see your answers. So Michael, feel free to, your questions, excuse me. So Michael, feel free to stop me. And can you see my screen okay on the YouTube stream?
Yes, we see you. You're ready to go.
All right. Fantastic. So everyone, thank you for joining. I was tuned into the session with Quentin. So I see we had 42 people in this room just a couple minutes ago. So we wanted to say thanks for spending some time with us. To introduce you to Literal, Literal is a new way to read. And we'll explain a little bit about what that means, and you'll find it pretty exciting. Best way to think about Literal as we go through the next couple of slides is Literal is a new media company. We are focused on secondary education, and our story starts with this guy. So this is Ernest Hemingway. And to get it kicked off, I'm going to tell you a short story about Ernest Hemingway. He wrote a book called For Whom the Bell Tolls, and another one called And the Sun Also Rises. For Whom the Bell Tolls and The Sun Also Rises both take place in Spain. And several years ago, myself and my co-founder, Michael Romrell, who's on the call with us, well, we found ourselves in Spain trying to read one of Hemingway's books, For Whom the Bell Tolls. And as we opened the book, it was a paperback book, and we started to read it, we couldn't get past page 2 before our brain started telling us, you got to check your phone, you got to check your messages, you're missing something. And we used to read all the time, but we found ourselves unable to focus on the book. Have you ever found yourself in the same position where you're trying to read, but you can't stay focused? Well, it turns out that that's a problem that a lot of people have. And we came up with a solution. And the first time that Michael and I talked about this solution was at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning as we were on our way to do one of the things that Hemingway had outlined in the book. We went to run with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. Now, just to provide some photographic evidence here, this is myself and my co-founder. That's me in the upper left. That's Michael down in the lower left. And this is where the story of Literal begins. And we're showing this photo because as Michael and I were running, that was about 2 years ago, and we're still running. And the purpose of today's session is to extend an invite to you. Now we're no longer with the bulls, but we've taken an idea of how we can improve reading for the Snapchat generation and make reading much more accessible for all of us who spend our time in front of screens rather than in front of books. So our invitation to you today is to log on to this website, literalapp.com/careers. You can go there directly from the literalapp.com website. If you scroll all the way down to the footer, there's a link called careers. We have the positions we're hiring for there posted, and we'll tell you a little about what those are. The reason we're giving that URL to you right now is because we would like to invite you to come run with us. Obviously not with the bulls anymore. There's a couple of different ways that you can join Team Literal to participate in the app that I'm going to show you in just a moment. To give you an idea of who we are as a team, we're a group of tech innovators, entrepreneurs, and educators. Some of us with backgrounds in the publishing industry. We're very hungry. We're very young. We started about 18 months ago. We are a venture-backed firm. So we've got a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of great connections, and really an opportunity to shine. And there are a couple of positions that we're hiring for on Team Literal right now. Couple of things. We are a startup. We are a remote team. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're overseas, if you're on the West Coast, if you're on the East Coast, we're looking for the best talent available. So if you find interesting what we're about to share with you, we invite you to join. There are a couple of positions that we're hiring for. I see a million people hitting the website right now, so thanks for following that link. That's good. My phone's lighting up here next to me. First, we are hiring for sales. We have room for field sales reps where you can sell in your geographies. There are a couple of key geographies we're looking for. We are also looking for inside sales reps to come help us and support our field reps and build remote relationships with the school districts primarily that we're selling into. We're also looking for someone who can help with marketing content. So if you're a social media guru, if you love posting on Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram, and you're clever at the way you put that marketing together and you can attract new users, we want you on the team. We've got a fantastic product and an amazing story to tell, and we need someone who can help us tell it. We're also hiring for content specialists. And what this means is, and I'll show you what this looks like in a moment, but we are a new way to read, but we're licensing content that you can currently find on Amazon and other services, but we're putting it in a completely new format. We need editors that can go through the process of putting books in the new format, which I'll show you in just a moment. So if you love reading classic literature, if you love reading new literature, if you love reading and you want to see other people learn to love reading, there's an interest and an opportunity for you here at Literal. Last but not least, we can have great content. We can talk about it all day. But if we don't make it look pretty, if we don't deliver a user experience that's extremely powerful, all of it's to waste. So we are also hiring for UX. If you're a UI specialist, if you're a UX specialist, we want you on board. We're looking for a phenomenal product manager to come join us to help build Literal out. We're also looking for 2 developers, a junior and a senior developer, and we're looking for customer success managers. These are people who can come in, take our customers, hold them by the hand, teach them how to learn the product, and be there to support them when they have questions. Now, that's what we're hiring for. So if you fit one of those skill sets and you're still on the call and you're still interested, let's talk a little bit about the product and what Literal is. Literal makes real books real different. We're available on the web as a progressive web app. You can also find us in the Google Play Store. You can also find us on the App Store to download. And there's a problem that we're trying to fix by making books new, by making reading a new experience. That's the fact that people aren't reading. And specifically in education, students aren't reading. And let's take a look at exactly why students aren't reading books and give you an idea of how bad the problem really is. First of all, none of us are reading, and there's a couple of reasons why. And there's several articles that have studied why we're not reading as much as we used to. These are some of the responses from teenagers that are currently in high school as to why they're not reading. Number 1, couldn't put it any plainer than this. Books are boring, right? You have to stare at black text on a white page for pages and pages and chapters and chapters. Nobody has time for that anymore. The internet is way too distracting. And this is my favorite from the New Yorker. I don't read books because books smell like old people. Now that's a really interesting comment, right? People who love reading say they love the smell of books, but if you don't read, you don't love the smell of books. You think they smell like old people. This is coming from an article from the New Yorker, so not our quote. And there's a reason why, right? Books haven't really changed in over 500 years. I mean, think about it. The same books that rolled off the Gutenberg press in their printed form, that's pretty much the same way we experience books today, but yet our world is dramatically different. In fact, our attention spans have changed, but books just haven't kept up. We spend most of our time throughout the day on our phones or in front of laptops, in front of computers, and we do a lot of things with that, right? It's not just email, it's not just surfing the internet, but we spend time on social media. We spend time on mobile applications like Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or TikTok, for example. In fact, if we look at how many students spend time on social media applications, it's about 96% of all high school students. If you ask those same students how many of them read a book every day for pleasure, it's only about 16. Nobody's reading because internet technology is so distracting. So what's the impact of that? Big deal, right? We're choosing to do other things with our time than read. Why does that matter? Well, here's one of the reasons why it matters. The US federal government spends $220 billion a year on secondary education, helping students read. But in 2019, in October of last year, when they took a poll and they looked at reading scores across the country, that $220 billion, you know what it produced? A 70% decline in reading scores. Or more clearly, reading scores are declining in 70% of US states. You can't be good at something that you don't do. You got to practice it if you want to get better. In addition to the reading scores declining in 70% of US states, this is atrocious. The SAT organization released this statistic. In 2019, the English scores of incoming college freshmen were the worst they've been in 15 years. Is the internet distracting? Yeah, it is. And it has a major impact. The US Secretary of Education, her name is Betsy DeVos right now. There are many opinions about her on both sides of the table, but this statement couldn't be any clearer. With scores like that and billions of dollars spent on education and reading scores still declining because nobody's doing it, we've got to do different. We've got to do reading different. We've got to do what it feels like to read a book different so that it's more engaging, so that it'll hold our attention. It must be America's wake-up call. And there is a solution. That solution is a little niche in the publishing industry called chat fiction. This is chat fiction. Chat fiction takes stories and says, you know what, we're not reading books, but all of us are on our phones. We're all texting. If you think about what a chat conversation is, it's really just a conversation between people, characters, right? There are people who say things to each other, and to help us understand who's saying what, every person who is speaking gets a profile picture. Generally, you have their name associated with whatever they say, and then what they say is in a speech bubble. And that's a way to visualize conversation, and all of us do it. The #1 application for all mobile phones worldwide, everywhere, is texting. We text on our phones more than we phone call people on our phones. So some innovating entrepreneurs said, you know what, why don't we write little stories in this format, like a chat between people? I wonder if people would read that. Well, it turns out lots of people are reading stories in this format, even though they're not reading books. So big, in fact, there are over 16.3 million people on Snapchat who are chat fiction enthusiasts who love reading stories in this format. In fact, these apps are so popular that the #1 app in the space hit the #1 position in the books category in the Apple App Store. They're ahead of Amazon. They're ahead of Apple's own books. They're ahead of Google Play Books. They're ahead of Kobo. They're ahead of Scribd. They're ahead of Overdrive. The #1 position in the books category isn't books, it's chat fiction. In fact, most of the major media outlets have picked up on this trend and have reported on it. What are millennials reading? Chat fiction. Forbes says, you know what teens are reading, what they go crazy for? Books in this format, or more specifically, stories in this format. So some people say reading is dead. There's a saying they had in England when a king would die, because there was always a successor. They would say, the king is dead, long live the king. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in order to save reading, literal is going to destroy it. Reading is dead. Long live reading. More specifically, welcome to literal, a completely new way to experience fiction on your phones and on your computer. I'm going to give you a quick, I'm going to move off the PowerPoint presentation here, and I'm going to show you literal rather than tell you about it. This is literal. If you landed on the literal website and you click on content, you'll be brought to this page, which is where the actual application sits. You'll notice that this looks right away like a little bit like Netflix. That's because it is, and it's intentional. It's a beautiful interface to experience and find books. Here we have some of the classic stories that you know and love, Peter Pan, some new stories you may not know, like Refried Dreams. As you scroll down, you see all these different options. Every single one of these is a story that you can lose yourself in, with fantastic characters, with fantastic storylines. I'm going to let this load here for just a moment. And when you open a book in literal, you don't see black text on a white page. You see an introduction to who you're going to be reading with. These are the characters in the story. And you notice that Pride and Prejudice was written in the England in 1800s. That was a long time ago. But the story of Pride and Prejudice is relevant to all of us today. We've taken the liberty here and we've set Pride and Prejudice in Cuba, for example. It's a Cuban cast. It's a classic rich and poor story. You've got class differences. You've got this energy throughout the book. We thought it was perfectly suited for Cuba. You see that the characters here are not the typical faces that you would associate with characters in the story, but they embody the essence of the character in the story. What's really fun is we've chosen these profile pictures, but if you don't like them, you can pick your own. You want to read Little Women with the Kardashian sisters? Go for it. You want to read Romeo and Juliet with Kim Kardashian and Kanye West? Go for it. The book is yours to do what you want with. Now, the real magic here is what happens when you click on read. I'm going to go to the chapter link. I'm going to go to chapter 1. And if you look at this, That's not what you expect when you open a book. Why? Because we visualized the dialogue in the book for you. Every character that we just saw gets their own profile picture. We call out the character's name. Every piece of dialogue goes on the left-hand side. Every bit of narration goes on the right. This is the easiest, most accessible way to read literature that you have ever experienced. It is a completely new way to see a story. In fact, there's a couple of ways that you can turn the pages. In literal, there are no pages. So what you do is you tap through the story, just like you would a text messaging conversation. You never know what's coming next. Here's the next speech bubble and the next. But if you get tired of tapping, if you don't like turning pages, if you don't like scrolling, we have this fantastic feature called autoplay. And with autoplay, I just click on the button, I pick a reading speed that's comfortable for me, and then I just sit back and I watch the book. You can read without even turning a page. This is the first time that you've ever been able to experience literature by watching it rather than reading it. So this is literal at its essence. There's a million other things here that I just don't have time to show today. I invite you to log in, create an account for yourself. You can explore any of the titles in there. You can create your own cast. It's a ton of fun. I'm going to go back here though and show you a little bit about how we're positioning and selling literal. Now, I'm not sure how sharing a YouTube video on a YouTube session works. So if for some reason this doesn't come up, let me know. All right, looks like that's not going to work for us. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. All right, Michael, I can see you. Can you shake your head yes if it says there is a solution on the screen? That is a yes. All right, let's keep going then. If you go to the Literal App website, there's a great video. I'm going to scroll through a couple of these slides we already covered. All right, tell you a little about who we are as a company. The current Literal team, as we know it, we've been working very hard for the past 18 months, really. And in those 7 months, we built a fantastic pipeline that you as sales reps can come in and help us unlock. We currently have over $7 million in our pipeline of school districts where reading is an assigned task, where students have to read, but they really just want a better way to read. Literal right now, we're introducing it into education. Just like Facebook started in education, we're starting in education. Facebook eventually rolled out and became an app that every consumer could access and connect with. Literal will do the same thing. We're going to spend some time in education. We're going to help meet the needs there. And then immediately we'll move out and we'll address a bigger audience. We're currently working with over 110 different school districts, over 800,000 students, almost 1 million teenagers that are in the school districts that we're working with, that we're trying to get literal in front of. Here's a sampling of some of the school districts that are working with us. If you happen to be here in Utah, where we're headquartered, you may recognize or have gone to school with some of these districts. We've already got agreements with several of them. We've got pilots in several stages. It's a really exciting time to be a part of Literal. And to give you an idea of what the branding is like, here you can see some of the title treatments. And we've built Literal to feel more like Disney Plus, to feel more like Netflix, to feel like Apple TV. Something modern and engaging, a fun way to read, right? Who wants to read in a boring way when you can have a much better visual design to it? We currently have over 200 titles on Literal. We've got about 1,000 in the pipeline right now. So we're quickly expanding our content catalog. That represents over 2,000 hours of reading. These are some of the key titles we cover. We just looked at Pride and Prejudice. We have a fantastic take on Frankenstein, The Scarlet Letter, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. You may have read these books. You've never read them like this before. We currently charge, basically it's a per month per student, but that works out to be an annual fee. So we charge districts about $23.99 per student per year. And it just depends on how many students the district wants to give access to. Let me keep going here. Excuse me. All right, let me cut over and I'm going to show you some of our partners. Give me just one moment. All right, here we go again. So we've received some just fantastic independent reviews of Literal from education companies. We were named a top tech for advanced learners in ELA by Common Sense Education. They gave us 4 stars out of 5 overall, but 5 stars on reading engagement, the highest score you can get. If you see on the right-hand side, these are some of our content partners: Core Knowledge, Saddleback, StoryShares. If you've never read the Blueford series, you're missing out. The Blueford series is a fantastic mini series of books that takes place in outside of Philadelphia, California. Just fantastic storylines. We've got those on Literal. We also have a number of tools that are built into the app that I won't demo for you now, but we have things like vocabulary and translation tools, where if you don't know English or you're trying to learn English, you can, and you don't know a word, or even if you speak English and you don't know a word, you can click on it and immediately get the definition for the word while you're reading the book. In addition to that, we've got translation tools. So if you want to see that word in French or Spanish, or that's your native language and you don't understand English, in the click of a mouse, in an instant, you can get that. I'm going to scroll through some of these that I just covered and just quickly click down to some of the other partners. This is what the overall market opportunity looks like today. Education is one of the fastest growing industries on the planet, currently growing at a 9% compound annual growth rate. COVID has accelerated that to almost a 15% compound annual growth rate. Education went through this just massive change with COVID, where literally half the world switched from in-classroom learning to online learning overnight. It's never happened in the history of the internet. That forced a lot of school districts to start to invest in technology, question they've never experienced before. You know, as we look at why Literal is safe in an education environment, for example, or why it's different than some of these other chat fiction apps, I mentioned briefly that the chat fiction apps that are highly popular today are written as if they're text between characters. So there's a lot of TTYL, there's a lot of LOLs. It's really pulp fiction type content. So a lot of horror, a lot of really like lusty romance, right? You get a lot of just really indecent stuff on theirs, and it's not real stories. They're sort of short snippets that people read. You can knock it out in 5 minutes. And it's just not very uplifting content. And more specifically, you don't have a story arc. You don't have character development. You don't have all of these things that we need from good stories and we need from books. The aha moment for Literal, when comparing it to some of these very popular chat fiction apps, Literal is the only chat fiction application on the planet that takes real books and puts them in this format. Let me phrase that. Let me restate that. I apologize. We are the only app on the planet today that takes real books and has built a technology stack on the back end that can convert those books into a chat fiction format and make it accessible to readers all over the world. And we're locking down that pole position we have through great competitive contracts and through fantastic relationships with school districts, right? Once we get in, we will be the first mover in these school districts, and we are the first mover in the industry to put books in this format. That's why we're venture backed. That's some of the exciting aspects of Literal that a lot of our venture investors see in us. I'm going to keep scrolling down here. Industry is growing fast. Of course, it's not anything we can do not anything we can do alone. We are a Google for Startups partner, so we integrate with Google's technology stack. We run on the Google G Cloud. If you can log in with Google, if you're a teacher and you have your entire class running on Google's education tools, we integrate with all of those natively as a Google for Education partner. We actually got our start with a check from Google. Google was our first investor. They wrote us a check, giving us credit for their G Cloud platform, which brought us into the Google fold. We have excellent relationships with manufacturers. with Rev Road, who is one of the other companies presenting today. In fact, Mentorly is also a Rev Road partner. And a company called Mackin. Mackin is 25 sales reps nationwide that sell this into their schools. Each of these partners serve a different benefit. And the value of working with Literal is not just this exciting market opportunity, not just this fantastic new format for reading that you can be a part of and you can help build and you can help turn it into something really market leading. But you'll also have the advantage of working with some phenomenal teammates and partners. I've highlighted some of these here. Rev Road is a business accelerator down in Provo. The founder of Red Road, Darren Hill, built an ed tech company for reading to a $100 million annual run rate. He knows the space inside and out. He's a professional and he is on the Literal team. In addition to that, our Google for Education, if you're a sales rep, there's no better way to walk in the door than having Google as a partner. It builds instant credibility, gets you in the door right away, and you can really get really far down the relationship aspect when you've got that at your back. And then we've got distribution. We've got the Mackin community. They have relationships with thousands and thousands of school districts all over the country. Those are relationships that in sales you can help work with to get Literal into classrooms throughout the country. And I'm going to end on just another shot at some of the characters in our stories. Literal is real books, real different. Here we have Sherlock Holmes on the left. We have the Odyssey in the middle. This blue-haired guy is from a certain version of Alice in Wonderland. We have the Time Machine. Also, we have White Fang. These are stories that have changed people's lives. These are stories that continue to attract readers all over the world. These properties bring instant brand recognition and credibility what Literal is building. It's an exciting time to be a part of the team. And we invite all of you, if you haven't, please go to the website, check out the roles that are available. We invite you to apply, literalapp.com/careers. Now I'm going to stop here for a moment, and I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and it's a little odd with the delay, so.
I'll jump in here, Lawton. So I've been
Thanks,
trying to answer questions. I've been trying to answer questions via the chat on YouTube, but let's go ahead and do this. So Natalie Tate asks, is Literal currently English only? Currently, yes. However, we've got, that will change eventually. But right now we're English only. Let's see. Are there webtoon comics chat formats? So at the moment, we're focused on kind of that literary fiction, that narrative fiction, that back and forth. That works really, really well inside of Literal, and we'll expand that. The majority of our content at the moment is on grades 6 through 12, just because we have this awesome demand for that from educators. They are so hungry to get students to finally read a book. I mean, you can imagine an educator who went into this so passionate about teaching students, and then every day they walk into school and it's just
nobody read.
They won't read. And
Yeah.
So they're really hungry for the solution. So that's where we've been focused. But going after schools is actually a market entry, which allows us to expand and go more B2C. So good question there. Yeah, Jude, you want to take Western sales? Dude, let's do it. Apply at literalapp.com/careers. And I'll tell you, on a sales rep side of things, here's what we're looking for. Right. So bonus points if you come from educational sales, right? More bonus points if you were at least an educator. However, those aren't required. What is required is you've got drive, you've got passion, and you're the kind of guy or girl, you're the kind of person that gets stuff done. Okay. So with any of the roles that we have, we operate a little bit differently. Our mantra from a personnel standpoint is get stuff done. Okay, I edited that for you. Get stuff done. We are a team that executes, right? So if you're the kind of person that wants to go in and talk about big ideas, but not actually, make it happen, probably not the right fit. But if you're the kind of person that's got ideas and you can run in and make it work, awesome. Okay, so let's do it. Oh man, sorry, I'm jumping through here, but the chat's jumping. So forgive me if I Okay. Alan, oh no, you're answering a different question. Sorry, guys. Oh yeah, so Kelly asked the question about curriculum developers who implement these changes. Okay, so let's talk about the customer success role for a second. We have an individual working with us right now who we actually have hired 2 people from the last Get Hired Summit. So we like the Get Hired Summit. We've got an individual working with us right now who was a former educator and is now helping us with curriculum development. And helping us with customer success. So I'll tell you, the ideal candidate for a customer success role would be someone who was previously an educator, who knows how to talk to educators, knows the lingo, knows the ins and outs, and someone that can also help us create curriculum and align what we have on Literal with individual state standards. That would be ideal, right? But again, what we really default to is someone who's got passion and drive, because if you have passion and drive, you're going to learn and you're going to pick up stuff that is going to be required to help us succeed. So,
Michael, can I chime in real quick? I see a
yes,
question
please.
in the chat about our average engagement per user per read, and also just wondering where we are as far as funding to get the business running. So 2 questions, 2 answers. Number 1, on average, when readers log into Literal, they spend 7 minutes. To put that in perspective, the average session time for TikTok is 10 minutes. The average session time for Twitter is 4 minutes. And Literal right now averages right at 7 minutes. So we're right in line with where we want to be. Accessible, short reading sessions on your phone. Hop out of the book, hop in as often as you like. And that puts us on par with some of the best applications in the market as far as capturing users' time and attention. We are a venture-backed company, so we're just closing our first venture round right now, which is why we're able to hire. So just to give you some confidence there, we've got, excuse me, a lot of financial backers that are behind us and supporting us. I see a question about product management and iOS developers. Michael, do you want to take a brief description of the app?
Yeah, so the app is actually what's called a PWA, progressive web app, which means we have a single code base. That code base is a web application built with Python Django. And because we've layered on this progressive web app, that allows us to actually be downloadable through the App Store. And when you download it through either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, it downloads and feels and functions and looks just like a native app. But what it's actually doing is opening the browser without all the browser tab options. And so it means we don't have a specific iOS code base or a specific Android code base. And so we have a single